Mamy nadzieję, że dzisiejsze spotkanie będzie dla Państwa interesujące i okaże się okazją do zadawania interesujących i ciekawych pytań. A teraz oddaję głos mojej koleżance, obecnej z nami również pani Annie Abramowskiej z EBSCO, która jest i będzie dla Państwa wsparciem w kwestiach zakupu i dostępu próbnego. Serdecznie dziękuję i zapraszam do udziału w sesji.
Dzień dobry, ja też witam Państwa bardzo serdecznie. Dziękuję za dołączenie do spotkania. Witam też naszych gości z wydawnictwa Wiley. Za chwilę przekażę głos. Też ze swojej strony zachęcam do zadawania pytań. Mamy tutaj dzisiaj bardzo taką dobrą dla nas sytuację. Pani Marta Dyson też mówi po polsku świetnie, więc to troszeczkę nam ułatwi kontakty, ale oczywiście jeżeli Państwo wolą, można zadawać pytania w języku angielskim czy polskim. Postaramy się tutaj pomóc tak, jak będzie to dla Państwa wygodniej. Także już nie przedłużając, oddaję głos naszym kolegom z wydawnictwa Wiley.
Dziękuję Aniu, dziękuję Kamila. Serdecznie witam Państwa. Cieszę się bardzo, że zdecydowali się Państwo poświęcić nam godzinkę swojego czasu, abyśmy mogli przedstawić Państwu nasz nowy produkt. Ja nazywam się Marty Dyson i jestem przedstawicielem wydawnictwa Wiley. Na pewno już się kiedyś spotkaliśmy na prezentacjach czy na spotkaniach, ale chciałam jeszcze się przypomnieć i też przypomnieć, że poprzez licencję narodową znacie Państwo już nasze wydawnictwo, macie Państwo dostęp do czasopism, do naszej kolekcji czasopism, a także do 2500 książek. Ja to wspominam przy każdej możliwości, kiedy mogę do Państwa przemawiać, ponieważ okazuje się, że nie zawsze taka informacja jest w instytucjach. Dzisiaj natomiast nie będziemy mówić o licencjach narodowych i o książkach czy czasopismach. Dzisiaj chcieliśmy Państwu przedstawić nasz nowy produkt, który Wiley posiada. To cyfrowe archiwa Wiley, czy po angielsku Wiley Digital Archives. Co to są te Wiley Digital Archives? To nie są tak zwane backfiles, czyli archiwa głębokie, które już na pewno miałam kiedyś szansę Państwu przedstawić. To są wszystkie teksty, które powstały, zanim ktoś złożył je w jakiekolwiek archiwa i przedstawił online, czyli są to mapy, ręcznie pisane dokumenty, notatki, różne zdjęcia, monografie, raporty i inne dokumenty, które towarzystwa naukowe zbierały przez lata i miały to u siebie w swoich archiwach i tak naprawdę nie za bardzo mieli co z tym zrobić. Niektóre te rzeczy były dostępne w archiwach czy przez jakieś kolekcje, ale wiadomo, to nie docierają do tak wielu odbiorców, ponieważ nie każdy ma szansę na to, żeby pojechać do jakiegoś instytutu i obejrzeć te archiwa. I zwłaszcza teraz w czasie pandemii, kiedy podróże, że tak powiem, na razie są, nie możemy podróżować, czy nie tak jak kiedyś było, więc te archiwa zostały zebrane przez Wiley. Współpracujemy z kilkoma towarzystwami naukowymi teraz, ale jeszcze cały czas rozwijamy tą współpracę dalej i wkładamy je na naszą nową stronę, specjalnie stworzoną, zaawansowaną stronę i te archiwa są dostępne tam. Jest dostępne tłumaczenie na tej stronie na 105 języków. To nie jest jakieś takie tłumaczenie, które Państwo, takie dosłowne słowo, ale jest takie, jakbyście Państwo na przykład w Google Translate przetłumaczyli. Wystarczająco jest, żeby można pracować na tekstach w swoim języku. Są rozszerzone metadane, które ułatwiają wyszukiwania i jest automatycznie rozpoznawany tekst, czyli tak zwane ATR. Także naprawdę jest to bardzo zaawansowana strona i Joseph później przedstawi Państwu, jak na tej stronie wyszukiwać i jak najlepiej tą stronę odebrać. Na dzień dzisiejszy Wiley współpracuje tak jak już wspominałam, z 5 towarzystwami. Jedno to jest British Association on Advancement of Science, gdzie mamy nauki rolnicze, biologia, chemia i inżynieria, Royal College of Physicians, gdzie jest medycyna wojskowa, ogólnie medycyna, zdrowie psychiczne, a także temat na czasie teraz, na przykład szczepienia. New York Academy of Sciences, jest to botanika, nauka o klimacie, ekologia. Royal Geographical Society, są to granice, zmiany klimatyczne, kultura, tożsamość, kolonializm. I Royal Anthropological Institute, czyli antropologia, archeologia, kulturoznawstwo i geografia. Joseph powie Państwu troszeczkę więcej o naszej współpracy i o tych wszystkich towarzystwach naukowych, z którymi współpracujemy. I to będzie jakieś około 20 minut jego prezentacji, ale większą część poświęci na to, żeby wejść na stronę i żeby Państwu pokazać, jak ta strona działa. Przygotował też kilka rzeczy, żeby Państwu pokazać, związanych z Polską, czy z naszym obszarem Polski. A również przygotowaliśmy dla Państwa tak zwaną white paper, którą pani Kamila i pani Ania prześlę Państwu po spotkaniu, i w tym white paper będzie informacja o naszych archiwach, trochę informacji, którą przedstawi dzisiaj też Joseph, a także zachęcimy Państwa do dostępu próbnego na 30 dni. I w trakcie tego dostępu też będzie można poprosić o takie specjalne demo już na przykład dla Państwa instytucji. Joseph i ja wtedy zorganizujemy dla Państwa, żeby dokładnie pokazać, jeżeli Państwo będziecie zainteresowani, jak i co, jak wyszukiwać i jak najlepiej odebrać tą stronę. I jeśli będziecie Państwo chcieli taki dostęp próbny, to zachęcam do kontaktu ze mną czy z panią Anią. Wiley współpracuje z EBSCO w ramach tego produktu, więc naprawdę zachęcam do obejrzenia. Także dziękuję serdecznie za uwagę. Joseph, I'm giving you now the microphone. Enjoy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Martha. Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today. Thank you also to Anna and to Camilla for arranging this session, where we're going to show you Wiley Digital Archives. I'm sure Martha just said, but my name is Joseph Gillinga. I am an archive specialist at Wiley. Apologies that this session is going to be in English today, but if you have any questions as I go along, please feel free to type them into the chat box. And I'm sure that Martha or Camilla would be happy to translate those for me into English, and then translate them back if necessary as well. So if you bear with me, I'm going to give about 20 minutes of slides and presentation and talking about Wiley Digital Archives today and giving an overview of the different archives that Martha just highlighted. And then once we get to the other end of that, I'm going to give you a live demonstration today of the platform and the website, which I think is a much better way to convey the sort of capabilities in Wiley Digital Archives and the sort of technological tools for research and for study and for teaching that Wiley can offer. So I'll get straight into it, and I'll start by talking a little bit about the program. So I'm sure many of you on the call will already be familiar with the concept of digital archives or digital archiving. I know that Poland's state archives have their own national digitization archives, national digital archives, sorry. That's a great platform. So I'm sure many of you may have used that before. And what we're doing at Wiley is at its heart, the same process. A little bit of example in the pictures on this slide. What we're doing at Wiley is identifying collections of important archival materials, in this case from learned societies that I'll talk about in the next few slides. We're identifying the relevant material. We are traveling to the archives to view it, to restore it where necessary. And you can see a few examples on this slide of work we've done to vacuum out mold from manuscripts, to repair damage in written form. But we're also doing a lot of cataloging as well. A huge amount of the material I'm going to show you today has previously never been cataloged before, so it was not open to public and general use and research. And there's another example there on the right of cleaning mold from old photos as well. So Wiley's undergone this restoration process and also the digitization of all of that material, scanning in very high resolution images of the original content from some of the world's most influential academic and scientific societies and from universities. And then what we've been doing is loading that content onto our digital archive platform and empowering the use of research and study and examination through some very advanced technological tools that I'm going to show you today. A few bullet points about Wiley Digital Archives and how it differs from other open access sources online is that it contains exclusive content. Over 90% of all of the content on Wiley Digital Archives, and that covers millions of individual images across tens of thousands of documents, is not available in digital format anywhere else. In fact, it isn't really available anywhere else at all because it hasn't been catalogued before. We have a focus across our collections on STEM history. We are the only archival program to focus on topics like the history of science and the history of technology, the history of medicine, natural history, and early geographical exploration and attempts at anthropology as well. The platform is built for research primarily. It's a technologically advanced platform, as I mentioned, that really empowers search with embedded leading digital humanities tools like our automated text recognition software, which I'm going to show you a little bit later, and show you really how that improves the ability to research. But the platform is also designed with teaching in mind and using those same technological tools, as well as a few other ways of really bringing primary source material into classrooms. We've really focused on teaching, especially at undergraduate level as well, and integrating primary sources and research techniques into undergraduate lessons, a seamless experience. It's a long list here on this slide of the types of content that's contained within Wiley Digital Archives, all very high resolution images of the original documents. On the left is more of the handwritten materials, such as, and the unpublished materials, such as manuscripts, ranging right from the medieval era up until the letters of the 19th and 20th centuries, administrative records, loose data, and field work, often recorded and jotted down in notebooks by hand, proceedings of societies and meeting minute notes, lots of grey literature that for whatever reason never made its way through to final publication. These could be long reports or draft essays or journal articles that never were fully published, and a whole range of other loose ephemera as well. In the middle is some of our more visual content, including over 150,000 maps in our collection, all in very high resolutions, photographs, hand illustrations, particularly in terms of geography, and also medicine in terms of anatomical drawings, lots of sketches as well, a huge collection of lantern slides as well. And this is a big part of the material that was never published before. Those lantern slides were digitized by Wiley and previously hadn't been turned into any sort of printable form. Some personal papers included there as well, and correspondence and notes. On the right is some of the printed material, so very early books, blueprints, newspapers, periodicals and journal articles, as well as published reports and monographs, and substantial amount of press clippings as well, little bits of newspaper that have worked their way into the archives, often pasted to something else, cut out and pasted. Although some of this printed material will be available elsewhere because it's published material, you may be able to find copies of these books elsewhere in archives and libraries. The value in these printed items is that they are often hand annotated and have been edited by the owner, by the author, and as I said, often had other bits cut and pasted into them, making them quite unique tools for study. So I'll quickly go through the partner archives without spending too long on each individual one, as I'd like to show you really. But each has substantial differences in terms of theme that I think are worth highlighting. Here are our current portfolio of archives. You can see their logos on the right there. The British Association for the Advancement of Science is a body I'm going to talk about in a bit, but really covers the history from the long 19th century of the British Society the promotion of science for the public use and public education. The idea to promote science as a tool for society, and the history of various experiments and discussions and showcases about science. The Royal Geographical Society, which, as the name implies, is dedicated to the pursuit of the field of early geography. The Royal College of Physicians, which is, I believe, one of the oldest medical colleges in the world, certainly the oldest that's still active, and has nearly 1,000 years worth of history of medical texts, medical research. The Royal Anthropological Institute of Great Britain and Ireland, which, much like the Royal Geographical Society, has a focus on developing anthropology as an early field of study. And then the New York Academy of Sciences, which, similar to the British Association for the Advancement of Science, funded and conducted lots of scientific research in the 19th century and onwards. All of our archives that I just listed are loaded onto the same platform. And what this means is that they can be cross-searched from one space. So from one search bar, as I'll show you later, you can look across all of Wiley Digital Archives and all of the documents on the platform. What this enables is a user or a researcher to look at a particular topic through a range of different lenses, different viewpoints from different professions, looking at the same topic. The example that's put on this slide is someone researching the effects and use of radiation could get the scientific perspective on the causes and the uses of radiation from the New York Academy of Sciences papers. They could look into the medical perspective of the effects of radiation on the human being through the Royal College of Physicians, as well as ways to treat the damage from radiation on human beings. You could look at the industrial use and development of devices that harness radiation and its cause and its effects for the betterment of society through the British Association for the Advancement of Science. And you could look on the effects socially of radiation on indigenous peoples, say, for example, nuclear testing sites in either Australia or in America, and the effects that those had on indigenous peoples and tribes people that lived nearby those sites from the Royal Anthropological Institute. So you can see that you can look at a topic through many different perspectives using Wiley Digital Archives. So to talk a little bit more about each of these then, the first, the British Association for the Advancement of Sciences, is our most recent collection. It is actually still in development. The site is up and running, but we, unfortunately, due to the global health pandemic, have not been able to travel to as many archives as we wanted to, so we are still scanning some of the material to load into this collection. But about 90% of it is done, and I think the remaining 10% should be completed by February next year. So some facts about the British Association, the BAAS for short. We love our acronyms at Wiley. The BAAS was active from 1831 to 2009 and received a royal charter in 1928. It embodied the organized and successful efforts of British science to transform science from a self-funded endeavor of the wealthy into a government-funded professional activity. And what that means is really there was a huge amount of suspicion in society and also in politics towards science during the 19th century in Britain. And the idea of the BAAS was to promote science in a positive manner to try and encourage more people to be interested in it rather than suspicious of it. It contains a long list of very famous scientists, including Nobel laureates, as William Ramsay, Frederick Gowland Hopkins as well, and Charles Darwin, who donated his home, Down House, to the association in 1927. And at the bottom there, I won't read them out, but is a long list of influential presidents, influential scientists. So the collection documents the organized and the successful efforts of the British scientific community to transform science, as I said. It mainly comprises the BAAS archive, which is held at the Bodleian Library, just down the road from me in Oxford. But where it differs from our other archives, where we have taken everything from one particular organization, the BAAS archive is made up of that core collection from the Bodleian and then a lot of material from lots of universities around the UK as well that also have relevant material. And the reason for this is that it was a nomadic society and it had meetings every year at different universities around the UK. So each university has its own collection of materials based around the BAAS. So for the first time, Wiley has brought all of those materials into one place, uniting it with the main archive at the Bodleian and also bringing in all of these archives you can see on this slide here. From all over the UK. That main collection of the Bodleian is at the top, and also University of Liverpool, Senate House, Leeds University, UCL, King's College, some Scotland material as well from University of Glasgow, and then Exeter, Leicester and Greenwich as well. So BAAS differs from our other archives in this regard, in that it is a grouping together of lots of material. It contains over 1 million images, a few examples below, including technical illustrations, handmade drawings and design sketches for new devices as well. The Royal Geographical Society, or RGS, again for short, was founded in 1830 and was given a royal charter by Queen Victoria in 1859. However, it is substantially older than that in terms of its collections because it bought materials, lots of early geographical materials that predate its existence. So this archive actually goes right back to 1400 up until essentially the present day. You can see actually one of the lantern slides in the collection. That's Warsaw there, one of the ones I found, and hopefully we can take a little look at that later as well in our demo. So it successfully advocated for the inclusion of geography in schools and is responsible for the first university positions in geography. It very much represents the history of the RGS, represents the history of geography as a discipline. They were really responsible for pioneering it as a field of study. The RGS holds the world's largest private collection of maps and charts, featuring all parts of the world, along with atlases, globes, world gazetteers and original manuscript mapping. And excitingly, the vast majority of those maps have been uploaded with GIS, geotagging coordinates on them as well, which I'll show you later. We've got some very notable members of the society, famous explorers, including John Hanning Speke, David Livingstone, Robert Falcon Scott, and Stanley and Ernest Shackleton as well. The society is still active today and has a current membership of more than 16,000 members. As I mentioned, there are over 150,000 maps, charts and atlases, 80,000 photographs and 20,000 lantern slides as well. The Royal College of Physicians, much like the RGS, has an archive that is much older than itself. This one is the biggest collection. It covers from 1205 right through to 1980 and covers the history of medicine as a discipline throughout this time, over 2 million images worth of content. It was founded in 1518 by Henry VIII, and it is the oldest medical college in England. It's a professional body for physicians and has 37,000 members and fellows today, and it's still active. It has always played a key role in setting and raising medical standards and influencing the way that healthcare is designed and delivered. For example, it published a report on the hazards of industrial work in 1627, and another on the dangers of excessive gin drinking in 1726, which unfortunately I think remains a problem in Britain still today. RCP expertise was relied upon to develop the Medical Act of 1858, and its support was crucial to the establishment of the National Health Service in 1945. It published a landmark smoking report on the damages of smoking to health in 1962, which was a real turning point in the conception and understanding of smoking. Its first female member was admitted in 1909, and its first female fellow in 1934, although it took till 1989 to have its first female president. There's a real wealth of visual material in Royal College of Physicians, including 2 million images that cover basically 7 centuries of medical practice, all sorts of anatomical drawings of notations of experiments, the one in the middle at the bottom there, I think, is recipe book, which are my particular favorites that have all sorts of medieval concoctions for remedies and drafts and potions, essentially, for curing sicknesses. The Royal Anthropological Institute of Great Britain and Ireland is a slightly smaller archive. It dates from 1763 to 2016. It was founded in 1871, but has roots back to 1837. And much in the same way that the Royal Geographical Society represents the history of geography as a discipline, the Royal Anthropological Institute very much represents the history of anthropology as a field of study. It is committed to promoting the academic and student understanding of anthropology and also promoting anthropology in public affairs. It still publishes some globally important and renowned journals, including the Journal of Royal Anthropological Institute, which has a 70% circulation outside of the UK. And it regularly still awards for outstanding scholarship and organizes many lectures and conferences around the world. It has 2 million pages, including the 150,000 image photographic library dating back to the 1860s. And it is a huge repository for all sorts of native and indigenous artworks that otherwise have been lost, damaged, or very hard to find. There's a huge photographic collection, and before that, hand-drawn illustrations of native artworks. And it's a huge wealth, particularly strong in African artworks, a few of which you can see on this board here. The final archive I'd like to talk about then is the New York Academy of Sciences, which covers from 1801 to 2013. It was founded in 1817 and brought together extraordinary history makers, including Thomas Jefferson. Charles Darwin appears as well, Margaret Mead and Thomas Edison, and also some items relating to Mary Curie as well, one of which you can see on the right there. It is dedicated to driving innovative solutions to society's challenges by advancing scientific research, education, and policy, from subjects such as global malnutrition to improving access to STEM education in underserved communities. It has a huge membership of 200,000 members across 100 countries, and it has a President's Council with 36 Nobel laureates sitting on it. It still, again, publishes an important journal, the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences, which is one of the oldest scientific journals in the United States and among the top 5-cited multidisciplinary scientific series worldwide. It's got a smaller but still interesting photographical collection, including Albert Einstein's photo files, photos in connection to the New York Botanical Garden, and also portraits on the very influential Committee on the Human Rights of Scientists that was active around the world in the latter half of the last century. Perhaps before I talk a little bit about some of the tools that you can use in Wiley Digital Archives, I think it might be better if I show you a demonstration of the site. But before I do, I will just pause there to ask my colleagues to see if there were any questions about Wiley Digital Archives. So please do ask away now. And if not, I'll ask if it's okay to unmute microphones just in case anyone feels like interrupting me whilst I'm doing the next section.
Dziękuję bardzo, thank you very much. Czy mają Państwo w tym momencie jakieś pytania do przedstawionej części prezentacji? Mamy pytanie dotyczące tego, czy jest możliwe pobieranie plików. Is it possible to download files?
It is possible to download files in high resolution. You can download the PDF files of the originals. And what I'm going to show you, there's some really exciting extras you can do with downloading map content as well. You can also download the metadata attached to the documents if you wish as well. And you can also share them online with other users or external users, or share them to social media platforms. And I will show you that just shortly.
Thank you. I kolejne pytanie, czy dostęp testowy dotyczy wybranych kolekcji, czy wszystkich, o których dzisiaj słyszymy? Does the test access include all collections or only selected collections?
Yep, we can do a trial access that has access to all collections, or conversely, if you're interested in just one archive, we can do that as well.
Thank you. So now I will turn microphones on. Włączę teraz Państwa mikrofony. Jeśli będą mieli Państwo pytania w trakcie demonstracji na żywo, prezentacji na żywo, bardzo proszę, aby je zadawać, jeśli będą Państwo chcieli. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to show you the site now, but please do feel free to either type a question or just interrupt on the microphone if you'd like me to go into something. So this is the landing page for Wiley Digital Archives. Once a user who has access signs in, this is where they will land. From here, you can navigate through the site. The first thing I should probably show you is that this language drop-down tool here, if we wanted to change the language of the entire site, including all of its features, we can quickly do so from up here. This will change all of the surrounding information in text boxes and data tools as well. But I will get lost if I change the language, so I'm going to change it back to English today. Next to that as well, you might miss it, it's quite small, is this little purple tab. By clicking down there, you can go to our Wda Training Hub, which has lots of demonstrations and tools and showcases of how to use the website, like the one I'm about to give you. So this is the landing page. If we scoot over a little bit from the language drop down here, this other archives tab, doesn't load the images properly, but this is where you can see the different archives. So we are currently in this Wiley cross search, and from here you can search across all of the content, everything across the archives. But if you are interested in just one archive, say the Royal Geographical Society, we could click on that one and we'll be taken to a very similar page with the same layout that allows us to search only the content from Royal Geographical Society. If we wanted to go back to, now they've loaded, if we wanted to go back to searching across everything, we'd go back to our main landing page here. So to talk about the tools that we have on this page, we in the bottom left have our 4 main types of content contained within the archives: manuscripts, monographs, maps, and photographs. If we click on one of those, we'll be taken through to the long list of those materials, which will be thousands of individual documents. And underneath these main 4 types of documents, there are subcategories of many different versions. Say, for example, under manuscripts, you may have illuminated manuscripts, you may have correspondence, you may have notations, you may have meeting minutes. So that's how you'd navigate into a long list of materials. In the middle here, we have some additional tools to do with data analysis and visualization and image explorer tools, which I will cycle back to and I will show you later. Because what I want to show just before we start properly is this little section here that has a bit more information on Wiley Digital Archives. If you click on the View More button here, you'll be taken through to even more information here about each individual archive, about what we've done, about our process. You can find the privacy policy here, as well as cookies, terms and conditions, our takedown notice, and also permissions here. If you wanted to reproduce content from the archives, say you wanted to use an image and publish it in a book, this is where you'd find out how you can go about doing that and where to acquire the permissions. But the main reason I wanted to navigate to this page is you can see that we have each of the archives listed here. The New York Academy of Sciences, Royal Anthropological Institute. If we click on Explore Collections here, we're taken through to what is effectively a finding aid for all of our materials. This basically reproduces the experience of being in an archive, actually traveling to an archive. You take out the finding aid and you can see sequentially each of the collections, and you can see where documents sit next to each other sequentially, side by side. The reasons that this is useful is that although most people, I think 90% of the users would use our search function to look through documents, we may use a search term that might show one of these items, but it might not necessarily show the next one as it sits directly after it because it's not relevant. So if you wanted to check where archives, how they're structured and what sits next to each other, this is where you'd go to. But as I said, most people will be using the search box to get into the collections. The search feature here, we can select which archives we want to search from. We'll use all of them for now. It has both a basic and an advanced search feature. It incorporates all of the usual Boolean operatives like and or that you'd expect in, say, a Google search. But it also incorporates some additional features, including something called fuzzy logic searching and proximity searching. And what that means is, and it's easier to show you, is that the algorithm will look for alternative spellings and it will look for different ways to type a certain word. This can be useful because we might not be sure of a spelling of a word. It may have changed over time, or we may be looking through handwriting, which I'll show you later, and the computer might not have read it entirely correctly. It might get one word wrong. So a good example to look up would probably be if we wanted to research Prussia. If we typed that in, you can see that our first result here is Prussia and our second is Russia, which is not what we're looking for. And the reason is that it is looking for alternative spellings of this word without the P. This can be useful, again, like I say, if we're not entirely sure what we're looking for, but it's annoying if we're looking for Prussia. So the way around that is to use some speech marks, parentheses either side. And then we're taken through to results that only are related to Prussia. But for the purposes of today, showing you some of the content, hopefully something that's interesting to you, I'll do a simple search, but we will look for, let's say, Warsaw to start with. And this is our landing page where we see the results of our search. We can see the content. We can see a quick breakdown by those 4 main types of content. We can see we've got 452 manuscripts relevant to Warsaw, 224 monographs, 10 photographs, and 296 maps tagged to Warsaw. The first 5 of each of these items will be displayed to us in a list here. And if we wanted to see more, we could click on the View More button underneath. On the left, we have a series of delimiters. We can narrow down by archive. We can look at the subtype, and these are all of the different types of material that sit under those 4 main types. So we wanted to look at just pamphlets, we can see we've got 57, or if we wanted to look at bibliographies, we've got 21 there. We can also narrow it by the collection within the archive if we know what we're looking for. And we can also narrow the date by adjusting our date slider tool, which gives us a little preview of where most of the content sits. We can see for Warsaw, it's mostly between 1848 and 1928. We can also limit it by subject of the document and by the source archive if we know what we're looking for. So if we take a look at some of the results we've got for Warsaw, we can see a few bits of loose papers here, not a huge amount in the title telling us what we're looking at. If we take a look at this one, notes on typhus in Warsaw, we're taken through to our image viewer page, which operates much as you would expect any modern image viewer, with the ability to search and zoom out to full screen. We can rotate the image. We can also adjust it in real time in terms of brightness and contrast. And we can even flip it into negative if that's particularly helpful for reading manuscript materials, especially medieval text. I find it sometimes very helpful to be able to reverse the color. We can print from here, and we can download as well. Download to a PDF, either the current image, all of the images within the file, or some select images. We also have a few additional tools up here, including this one that might look familiar to you. It's a search button that we can use to share this document, and only this document, with either people that have access to the archives as well, using this internal users link, either emailing it or copying a link, so that anyone who also has access to the archives will be taken in. We can also share it with people who do not have access to Wiley Digital Archives, and that will show just this document. We can either copy that, email it, or share it to social media accounts as well, so that we can share it with viewers who don't have access to Wiley Digital Archives. On the left is our quick navigation thumbnails that allow us to move quickly through our document. And apologies that my internet connection may slow things down a bit here. So I might turn off my video and see if that improves things. And if not, I'll refresh. And from here, we can quickly have a look at how many documents we have, how many images, sorry, we have in our document. This one's only 7 images, but they can run up to thousands of pages in Wiley Digital Archives. We've got a few notes at the top about what we're looking at. And if we want to see more information, we can go down to the citation tool, where we're given the reference number, the date, the content type, and its source. We can also see who the author is. And if we wanted to see more materials, say by Wilberforce Goodall, and who's conducted this study of typhus from Royal College of Physicians in Warsaw, if we clicked on his name, we'll be taken through to all of the other content that he's created that's in the archives. You can see he's got a map of Warsaw down there with keynotes as well. If we wanted to take a quick look at some of these documents, if we click on this eye tool, we can get a quick preview of what's inside that document. If we go back to this document, this one, like many in Wiley Digital Archives, is handwritten. It's manuscript material. What we can do with this, thanks to our new technology, automated text recognition, which I mentioned earlier, is you can see it's already highlighted our key term here, Warsaw. But if we wanted to look for, say, typhus, it'll find it for us in the text. This is because we've employed an algorithm that is able to read handwriting, much like you would use OCR technology to recognize printed text. It's scanning the entire document for those keywords. We can do this not only through this box within the archive, within the document, sorry, but we can also scan every document simultaneously in Wiley Digital Archives using this same technology. What that means is that we're able to find documents that may take us days, weeks, months to locate. If we were looking by hand in the archive, we can very, very quickly pull up a list of relevant documents based just on what's written in the text. For example, this one has what we're looking for in the title. It has Warsaw here, but it might not. In some documents where it won't have specifically what we're looking for, we can search through all of the content of the text instead. What this same technology also allows us to do, as well as searching the document, is to generate a working transcript of the images as well. This isn't something that's been typed in by an indexer. This is something that the computer is generating from the image. It's not 100% accurate all the time, but it gives you an idea of what's being written here. Say if it's difficult handwriting, this can be a real aid to reading it. What we're also able to do with this, for people who students and users who don't have English language skills, or for whom English isn't their first language, we can translate this transcript into other languages. Again, it's not a critical translation of the materials, but it does provide a stepping stone into understanding what's being written here. If we go back to our search results, we can look at some of the other materials we have here. We can see what sort of monographs we have, and for the purposes of Wiley Digital Archives, what's meant by monographs is anything that's been published. We can see we have some data here. And a lot of the content, as well as being handwritten, is early forms of data, like charts and tables. Where tables appear in Wiley Digital Archives, you can see that this one has been highlighted red. What that means is that by clicking on the image, we are able to download that data directly into an Excel format so that we can start editing it and using it immediately. Unlike the automated text recognition software, the data in tables has been checked and has been retyped by indexers to make sure that it is 100% accurate. So this is reliable data that you can start immediately using, or if you wanted to use it to publish academically. We also have some additional features in terms of citation for students or academics. If you wanted to use this material in a paper, if you click on this icon up here, you're able to see a quick citation for this document, either MLA, Chicago, APA, or we can export it digitally to EndNote, digital referencing tools like EndNote, like ProCite, Referencing Manager, or Zotero. We're also able to save within Wiley Digital Archives. If we wanted to come back and look at this later, we click this button, and if we go up to Tools, we can view list, and we can find it here. This is one I saved earlier. So that's the majority of the written content carried in over in monographs and manuscripts. We take a look at some of the visual materials that we've got. We can see we've got 10 photographs in this collection for Warsaw. If we take a look at this one's from the Royal Geographical Society. This is an example of a lantern slide, something that previously will not have been published. These lantern slides would not have been converted into a picture or developed before. But Wiley has done that, and what we're able to do using new technologies is really increase the visibility through high resolution scans of lantern slides that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do in the archive. In the archive, you may have to put it through a projector and look at the image on a wall, but because we've scanned it in such high resolution, you're able to enhance the quality of something that would ordinarily be a very small picture, and to really pick out some of the detail in that image that wouldn't ordinarily be accessible. Again, I don't think it's going to help us in this case, but if we wanted to, we could mess around with the contrast and the brightness, or adjust the color, or flip it into negative as well. Although I don't think that's going to be particularly useful in this case. We're also able to download the content as well, just like we would with a written document. These lantern slides, you might notice, have no date. Although we're given an indication at the top of what we're looking at here, you can see it's Warsaw, a lot of the material within Wiley Digital Archives is not provided with a date. The reason for this is that in the archive itself, there's no date listed. They're unsure of the provenance of this. I mean, we can get a pretty good estimation. It looks like turn of the century, late 1800s, early 1900s, this image. But the reason we haven't added this in is because we can't be certain of it. It could be a work of scholarship in itself to date some of the items that we have. So ND at the top means no date, although it will still appear if you run a search with limited date range. This sort of content will still appear, so you're not missing it. Looks like my internet connection is giving up, so we'll leave that one for now. As I mentioned, a huge amount of the visual content in Wiley Digital Archives is maps. Maps have been scanned not only in 400 dpi resolution, so it's very high resolution, but they've been sequentially scanned as well, which means that you can zoom right into some of the detail, especially on some of the much larger maps. We have some enormous maps in Wiley Digital Archives. Some of them are so big they had to be scanned using drone software, drones to fly over the map as it was laid out because it was too big for a scanner. Like this one, many of the maps, especially the early ones in Wiley Digital Archives, have handwritten annotations in them and also have been redrawn over the years. And you can see where marks have been removed and replaced in some of the very old maps. The maps date from the early Middle Ages right up until the present day. What we're also able to do with maps, as well as download them either as the entire collection or as single images, is we're also able to tick this box, which is download as GeoTIFF with coordinates. Now, hopefully my connection is quick enough to handle this. I think it is. But what that means is not only do we get an image of the map, but if we open some third-party software, like Google Maps, for example, this is Oxford, where I'm based today. We can go to File, and we can import, if we find it, GeoTIFF, we can import the item we've just downloaded. and we'll be flown to the location where that map is from. I have to use one earlier because I think my internet connection is struggling. What we're able to do then is overlay a map. This is one I used the other day from up in Finland. We're able to overlay that map onto the present day coordinates, and we're able to compare the accuracy of the map and the cartographical methods of its map makers to its present day location. See how accurate it is. It's also very useful in terms of place names that may have changed, and working out exactly where it is your map is talking about, essentially. We'll see again if I can import the one that I wanted to. But I'm afraid to say that my internet connection might have had enough of it. Yeah, I think so. Let's try again. Whilst that's loading, I may as well pause there to see if there were any questions or if anyone wanted to ask about any of the features that I've shown so far.
Czy mają Państwo jakieś pytania w tym momencie? No question so far.
No questions? Okay. Just going to find a more relevant map there. And then I'll move on to show you some of the additional tools we've got in terms of data analysis. Let's see if we've got a more interesting component. Let's try. Let's take a look at this one. Well, I'm afraid the combined efforts of a video call and running Wiley Digital Archives has proved a bit too much for my internet connection. So I'll move on and I'll talk about some of the data analysis tools that we have in the archive. So this is the central hub here that I spoke about at the beginning, the visualization and exploration tools. This is a range of different tools we've employed that make use of the extensive metadata in Wiley Digital Archives, and also different ways of using that geotagging software that I just showed. So if we try our analysis hub, and let's continue with our search. We wanted to look up typhus, and we wanted to say compare that to cholera. We can add our key terms here, and we can chart these key terms using that same automated text recognition software that searches the whole document across the entire archive. And what this is doing is pulling out each time those words appear in handwritten documents and in text documents and in photographs and maps as well. This gives us an indication of how frequently certain topics, like in this case, typhus and cholera, have been spoken about throughout all of the documents on the archive. We can also narrow this by date range if we wanted to look at a very particular period. And we can see from this example that, unsurprisingly, the use of both typhus and cholera explodes in the 1800s. If we wanted to check each individual data point that's being used to plot this, we could click on the results. We can see we've got 46 for cholera in 1875. If we click on that data point, it'll show us exactly where it's drawing that information from. We're also able to use a very similar tool, which is term popularity. What this is doing, rather than looking for how frequently the term crops up, is looking at its relative popularity compared to other terms and other words across the archives. This is usually quite skewed towards the start of the archives, because you can imagine we don't have a huge amount of material from 1280, so it tends to throw off the responses. But if we narrow the search results, it becomes much more useful to see the relative popularity of a term compared to other words from that era. We also have a frequency distribution, which gives us a little more data about where that word is appearing across the documents. This may take a little while to load as well, but we also have a range of visual tools that are a different way for students especially, but also researchers to explore the archival content in Wiley Digital Archives. What this is doing is using our keywords, typhus and cholera, and basically providing us a visual spread of the different topics within those two keywords. For example, the treatment of cholera, or it'll group them together, say Royal College of Physicians of London. We wanted to look at the documents it have relating to these two keywords. If we click on it, we're taken down to a substrata of other topics within that main topic. And on the right, we're provided again with the materials it's using to source this information from. You can also view the same things in the form of a word cloud. It might be particularly useful for students who don't necessarily know what keyword they're looking for. And clicking through these again will take you through to the documents for that keyword. We're also able to analyze the keywords we've used in this term typhus here. Cholera is still loading. We're able to look at, using that same automated text recognition software, the collocations for that word, which means the words that appear immediately after our keyword in the text. We can see that most often across the archives, in fact, 831 times, where typhus appears in the text, fever is the next word that comes after it. Typhus cases, 33, and 10 typhus patients. If we look at some of the visual tools that we have in terms of exploration, we have our explore function in the middle, both for photos and maps. We click on photos. And we search. We can use the same keyword search to bring up items. This draws not only photographic materials like the ones we looked at, not only photos and maps, but it also pulls out images where they appear in the documents as well. For example, this will have appeared and these will have appeared in either books or manuscripts, and it's pulling out any visual content at all. We can see we've got some material relating to Mary Curie here. And the reason this would have been pulled out is it's identified that there's a photo here and added it to our list of visual materials. By clicking on them, we can be taken through to where that image appears in our full file. We're able to also use that search term to look at various maps. And what we're also able to do with this world viewer is if we zoom in to the area we wanted to look at, let's change up and say we were interested in maps of France and Paris. We can draw a text box, a search box around that, and it'll provide us with the results that fall within this category. What we can do with this, as well as drawing our box, is we can also combine it with a keyword. If we wanted to look at maps relating to cholera in France, we can use the combination of this box and our keyword. And it takes us through to a map detailing cholera and its spread across, in this case, Russia. But I think we should have one for France here as well, using a combination of two different search capabilities. That same map search is also available if we wanted to look at published materials. This one is less comprehensive because for a lot of materials in Wiley Digital Archives, we don't know the provenance of its publication. What we're able to do is use a combination of search terms and also drawing a box to look at materials that were published in a specific area. If we wanted to see things that were published in France, we can draw a box around it, giving us a long list. You can also see what materials were published in Poland. You can see it provides us with a little preview there as well of the main centers of publication of materials. This also includes handwritten letters as well, which is why you may see some slightly surprising elements in terms of Africa, because if a letter has a address where it's been sent from, that will count as its place of publication as well. We also have some advanced tools for refining this, like in our usual search, and also an advanced date tool as well to narrow down our search. I'm aware that I've been talking for quite a while about this now, so I will pause there to see if there are any questions about anything on Wiley Digital Archives, either about the content or about some of the tools that I've shown, or any questions in general.
Thank you, Joseph. Czy mają Państwo jakieś pytania po obejrzeniu prezentacji?
Można zadać pytanie?
Oczywiście.
Chciałbym prosić Pana o wyjaśnienie w gruncie rzeczy. Pan przechodził dosyć szybko z jednego ekranu do drugiego, bo niewiele jest czasu, ale gdzie znajdują się te wszystkie informacje edukacyjne, jak właśnie uruchamiać poszczególne komendy, gdzie czego szukać, po prostu takie materiały edukacyjne. Gdyby Pan był uprzejmy powiedzieć i pokazać, gdzie to się znajduje.
The question, dziękuję serdecznie za to pytanie. The question is, where can we find information or educational resources to help students or researchers to use the tool?
Absolutely, yeah. So at the top of the landing page here, this purple tab, if we click down there, we can see this Wda Training Hub here. If we click on that, it'll take you through to our page here that has a series of live trainings, tools on how to access Wiley Digital Archives, as well as resources for librarians and administrators as well. So there's a range of sessions here about how to use some of the more advanced features in the archive. And also I and my fellow archive specialists are available for sessions and for tutorials on how to use the archives.
But you are available where exactly? Where can I find you? Tell me.
Yeah, well, I will circulate my email after this. So you can email me directly.
Right.
And I shall also post the link to this training hub as well. But if you just Google Wiley Digital Archives as well, that will take you through to some training materials.
So where can I find your email address if I want to turn to you?
Mm-hmm. I will circulate that through Camilla, hopefully after the presentation.
Oh, I see. Thank you very much.
No
Tak,
problem.
będziemy dołączyć informacje i możliwość kontaktu w mailu, który wyślemy po spotkaniu.
Ja jeszcze chciałam tylko dodać, że to jest platforma Digital Archives jest oddzielna od Wiley Online Library, przez którą Państwo macie dostęp do książek i czasopism. I ona jest bardzo, znaczy na pierwszy rzut oka może być trochę skomplikowana, bo jest strasznie dużo informacji.
No właśnie.
No, dlatego właśnie proponujemy Państwu, żebyście Państwo do nas napisali. Tak jak Pani Kamila mówiła, dostaniecie Państwo maila od EBSCO z informacjami, jak się skontaktować ze mną czy z Josephem. Możemy załączyć Państwu dostęp próbny i w trakcie tego dostępu, bo wiadomo, jest dużo tej informacji i trzeba się nauczyć, jak to informacje znaleźć. W trakcie tego na przykład dostępu próbnego na 30 dni możemy z Państwem się skontaktować, znaczy na pewno się skontaktujemy z Państwem i możecie Państwo zażyczyć sobie takie szkolenie na przykład tylko dla Państwa czy dla uczelni. I wtedy Joseph najprawdopodobniej albo razem z Josephem zorganizujemy takie spotkanie, zadzwonimy, pokażemy, gdzie przeszukiwać, będziecie mogli Państwo, nie wiem, może nawet z nami razem szukać na komputerze, tak jak Joseph będzie pokazywał, tak Państwo u siebie, żeby pokazać, żeby zobaczyć, jak znaleźć te informacje, które Państwa interesują. Poza tym w trakcie szkolenia, jak będziecie Państwo chodzić po tej platformie, to później już można się tak powolutku nauczyć tego, gdzie co kliknąć, gdzie co zobaczyć. Także naprawdę zachęcam do tego dostępu próbnego i zachęcam do zabawy na tej stronie, bo naprawdę jest bardzo dużo bardzo interesujących informacji na tym.
Pani było... O, przepraszam.
Nie szkodzi, proszę kontynuować.
No, bo właśnie jeszcze chciałem zapytać, gdyby Pani była uprzejma powiedzieć, jakie są mniej więcej podstawowe opłaty związane z dostępem do tych informacji. Państwo mają indywidualny dostęp i grupowy, w sensie instytucji,
Tak.
czy tylko instytucje?
Nie, no to jest, możemy rozmawiać na każdy temat. Kolekcje są wyceniane oddzielnie, a także łącznie, więc, a także dla instytucji mamy cenę dla instytucji, ale oczywiście jeżeli byłaby grupa instytucji zainteresowana dostępem do takich archiwów, to jak najbardziej możemy już indywidualnie, to nie ma, że tak powiem, jaka lista cenowa, tylko indywidualnie porozmawiamy z Państwem, co Państwa interesuje, do czego chcielibyście mieć dostęp, kto miałby dostęp i wtedy na pewno dojdziemy do jakiegoś...
konsensusu, tak. Dziękuję bardzo, dziękuję uprzejmie.
Dziękuję.
To jeszcze ja pozwolę sobie zadać takie pytanie organizacyjne odnośnie testu. Jak szybko możemy liczyć na uruchomienie dostępu testowego i czy będzie on według adresów IP, czy też może na hasło? Jak to
Tak, to jest tak samo jak wszystkie dostępy próbne w Wiley przez IP i nasz dział działa bardzo szybko. No, zawsze prosimy dać nam kilka dni z wyprzedzeniem, bo wiadomo, jeżeli jest kilka, to stoimy w kolejce, żeby uruchomić, ale no, kilka dni nam wystarczy na to, żeby Państwu załączyć ten próbny.
Czyli jeżeli Państwo już uzgodnicie wewnętrznie w swojej instytucji, to myślę, że w ciągu, no nie wiem, jednego tygodnia możemy liczyć wtedy na uruchomienie.
Na pewno. I ten tydzień można spożytkować na to, żeby poinformować wszystkich o tym dostępie i wtedy w tym momencie my możemy też, albo proszę użyć nasze rzeczy online, czy na przykład tak jak wspominałam wcześniej, napisaliśmy dla Państwa taki white paper, które można na przykład powysyłać do wszystkich użytkowników i zachęcić do dostępu próbnego i w tym czasie my go załączymy, potwierdzimy. I ja dostaję zawsze statystyki tygodniowo od koleżanki, która ma, więc ja mogę zawsze co tydzień wysłać Państwu statystyki, jak ten dostęp próbny się odbywa i czy jest jakiś odzew od czytelników.
Just thought I'd say apologies. This is what I was trying to do earlier. I thought I'd better show you a good map of Poland. So this is what I was attempting to do. I think embarrassingly, the map I chose wasn't for Warsaw. It was for somewhere else. It was for Warsaw, I think, which is in South Africa. So that's why it wasn't working.